It's like watching a car wreck in slow motion. I wake up in the morning, compose a beat. Oh wait, no, that's a different line. I wake up in the morning and I'm like, is this really happening? Is the Marvel movie getting shredded this badly? Pulled up today, it's at 53%. Like 9 out of the last 10 reviews that have come in have been negative. Let's look. Oh, it's not that bad. There was a run here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 8 out of 10 there. And then here, even like 1, 2, 3, 4 out of the last 6 negative. I can't actually believe it. Now, do I think this will do anything to the box office? This will be the test. Normie Marvel fans. Hey, by the way, are you in the market for a new computer? Are you thinking about getting a new computer? You should check out Meta PCs. I'm not going to run the ad. Just metapcs.com/the quartering, or use promo code quartering or the quartering to save at checkout. You get money off if you use the promo code. Just consider it. If we look at this, there's a good 90-minute movie buried somewhere within these 2.5 hours. Eternals shoots for the stars, and if the finished feature isn't quite out of this world, it's still close enough to getting there. That my interest in seeing where these characters go next is exceedingly high. You know what's interesting is I've actually been reading some more box office predictions, and we're actually starting to see some early box office numbers. This movie might do fine. Like, people are so desperate for apolitical, like, just entertainment type stuff that they might just go out and see it anyway. It's mind-boggling to me. What does break even look like for the Eternals? Well, Eternals reported a production budget around $200 million. That figure makes it one of the pricier non-Avengers movies in the MCU. Shang-Chi was $150 million, while Spider-Man Far From Home was $160 million. Captain Marvel's budget was even less, at $150 to $175. Now, paying all those actors might have had something to do with it. In the last few years, Black Widow and Black Panther were MCU solo movies that cost about $200 million, so it costs about the same. The general rule of thumb for a film's break-even points is its production budget doubled. This means Eternals will have to gross $400 million globally to recoup its costs. Right now, it has a good chance of hitting that mark. A handful of Hollywood blockbusters have passed that threshold worldwide. Shang-Chi, $423, No Time to Die at $606, Black Widow at $379, but its grosses were affected by the hybrid Disney Plus release, where viewers paid to watch it via Premier Access, which Disney would prefer, by the way. Given the popularity of the MCU and the gap between studio tentpoles since No Time to Die opened, there should be demand for Eternals. However, there are some factors working against it. Eternals has a very long runtime, clocking it at 2.5 hours, way too long. This is significant because that limits the number of daily screenings theaters can show. Well, that's interesting, which can impact box office haul. Didn't seem to hurt Endgame. Additionally, the film is a rarity in the MCU, as Eternals has a Rotten Tomatoes score. Typically, MCU films are well received. At this point, the franchise is probably critic-proof, but it will be interesting to see how the mixed word of mouth affects the Eternals box office. More casual audiences may opt to wait and skip the Eternals in the theater, as they feel it might not be a must-watch. But here's some interesting news. Eternals eyeing $75 million opening weekend. Ranks as Fandango's second best pre-seller of the year. Second best? Maybe what, to James Bond? The domestic box office is in store for a resurge again with Disney's and Marvel's Deep Universe IP Eternals. This weekend's movie's heading towards a $75 million opening frame in 4,000 locations, with previews beginning tomorrow. Fandango is reporting that the Zhao-directed feature is now the second best pre-seller among the year's blockbusters per advanced ticket sales. Eternals is pacing ahead of Shang-Chi and Legend of the Ten Rings, which previously held the position, only behind Marvel's Black Widow. So if it's slightly, so here's the thing. This is Hollywood spin for you. Okay. Black Widow did less than $400 million at the box office, right? Now, they did also sell via Disney Plus Premier, so they probably made a little money. But if it's less than Black Widow, one could predict it will do less box office than Black Widow, less in pre-sales, which means it will lose money. I don't know how many people are going to pay $30 on Premier Plus. I don't know if this is actually available on Premier Plus or not. In overall exhibitor pre-sales, which includes Fandango, Deadline hears that Eternals already has banked $13 million, which is 13% behind Black Widow at the same point at the same time, but 25% ahead of Shang-Chi. The movie is tracking strong with males, Hispanics, African Americans, and Asian audiences. Everything in the MCU tracks strong with males. The slowdown from the Pic's 80 million plus original projection stems from being the worst reviewed MCU film to date at 54% rotten. The Pick at 2 hours and 40 minutes long is a complicated storyline, though the Marvel brand alone is known to be Teflon. This is a deep dive piece in the MCU, which is playing into the most recent phase's multiverse that's bound to stoke the Reddit crowd, which could potentially send grosses even higher. In addition, another fall fanboy comp that shows how box office can decimate its Rotten Tomatoes reviews is the Venom movies. This is one I always talk about. The first film notched a 30% rotten, but opened to 80 million, while the sequel, Let There Be Carnage, improved to 60% fresh, currently holding the best box office opening in domestic box office with 90 million. Thor Ragnarok in 2017 as the best domestic opening for an MCU title in November with 122 million. The outlook for the Eternals isn't that far from Doctor Strange's $85 million debut and Thor Dark World $85.7 million. Thor Dark World also the previous, I think, worst rated MCU movie. So, I mean, maybe regardless, like people are saying, maybe what people are saying is true, that people will just see Marvel movies because. And I could almost ascribe to that. For me, a mediocre Marvel movie means that I will probably watch it via stream. You know, for example, like Black Widow, I wanted to see. I wanted to support Scarlett Johansson. I wanted to support the Black Widow character. But I wasn't going to run out and pay $30 to see it in the movie theater. Now, if you go see it at a matinee or you got nothing going on that weekend, it's a little easier to spend the cash. But it's been really, really surprising that the projections are this good. What that tells you, perhaps, is that critics are worthless. The Eternals' success, if it is a success, proves that critics are worthless. Now, I know you're probably already saying, like, bro, we know. But, you know, it does, you know, to me, the thing that really matters is the audience score, right? That's the number that really matters, audience score. And if this thing, I still think the audience score for the Eternals will be in the 70s. I'm very, very, very interested to see how this shakes out. The number, by the way, this was 57 when this article was written. That number marks the lowest score for the MCU and the only rotten MCU movie to date. It's not coming back either. Like, it's not coming back. It's at 53 and the negatives keep rolling in. There isn't enough positive reviews that could roll in at the last minute here to push it back over 60. But again, maybe it's just not going to matter. The Eternals, if it has box office success, will prove what we've been suspicious of from the start, and that is that the critics are irrelevant. It's interesting to me that critics managed to give this movie the low marks that they did, given how hardly they pandered to them. But I've actually gotten a little bit of faith restored in modern day critics, because if they're willing to say, yes, we acknowledge that this movie is woke and it was still bad, like, that does give me a little bit of hope. I'm curious, are you going to go to the theater this week and see the Eternals? I know my viewers probably don't care what critics say. But do you think that it's going to do 75, 80 million this weekend? It'll be curious to see. Hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you again real soon.